Hi, welcome to Arkansas Civic Action Network. I'm Dr. Gail Choate,
And I'm Davis Hendricks.
and the two of us started this organization last summer because we just firmly believe in civic education. Davis, you got anything you want to tell our viewers about this program? And
I'm just glad that they're tuning in and getting information that I think is going to be very important to them in the future and right now. We're in the middle of a session, and so I think that having opportunity to know how to approach the legislature and how to make your voice heard is vital for every citizen who sincerely wants to participate.
absolutely. And what you're going to find is that this is a 6-part series. What you're going to watch right now is just part 1. It's going to be a little bit maybe dry because it's going to go through the structure of the legislature, specifically here in Arkansas. Now, a lot of what we talk about will apply to other states as well, and even to our federal government. In today's session, unlike most of the others that you'll see us posting in the future, this one is going to be just me kind of talking with some PowerPoints. We don't have an audience on Zoom today, but we are hoping that we can present you with some really important information. And then you can join us in the future sessions and reach out and let us know if you have questions. Anything else, Davis, before I send us over to a PowerPoint?
No, just I know you're going to leave them with great information, and they'll have an opportunity, of course, to reach out to our website. We'll have a YouTube channel that they'll be watching this on. There's ways to connect with us and ask questions and get back to us so that we can get you more engaged if necessary.
Perfect. Well, thanks, Davis. Thanks for stopping in. And I'm going to switch us over now to one of those famous PowerPoints. Thanks,
And I'm
Davis.
going to leave it with you.
Okay, thank you.
Have a good one.
All right. So like I mentioned earlier, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be just taking a look at some basic structural information about the Arkansas legislature. And I ask that you be a little bit graceful with us, hold us in a little bit of grace, because Davis and I have been really focused on bringing information to communities. So some of it's not so slick, and you've already noticed a few technical glitches, but you're going to find that the information that we present is real, it's relevant, and I think you're going to find it interesting. So this workshop series is entitled Arkansans in Action, and this specifically deals with the legislature. Our organization is called Arkansas Civic Action Network, and our mission is to contribute to strong, vibrant communities by facilitating the growth of citizens on their journey toward full civic participation. We believe that the best Arkansas is one where everyone has a voice, not only has a voice, but knows how to use it and can use it confidently. This particular workshop, this first one, is grounded in the Constitution of the state of Arkansas. The preamble says very simply, "We, the people of the state of Arkansas, grateful to Almighty God for the privilege of choosing our own form of government, for our civil and religious liberty, and desiring to perpetuate its blessings and secure the same to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish the Constitution." The reason that I start this presentation with that slide and with that information is because it points out how everything in our government is intended to start with we, the people. The Enlightenment period really talked a lot about how a government is formed out of the desires of the people who live in an area. And that's why we refer to our government as being by, for, and of the people. And Arkansas is no different. In fact, Arkansas's constitution is really clear that the people are to not only have a voice, but they are the source of power. Article 2, Section 1 says, "All political power is inherent in the people, and government is instituted for their protection, security, and benefit, and they have the right to alter, reform, or abolish the same in such manner as they may think proper. So again, it all starts with us, the people. In Article 5, Section 1, it states, the legislative power of the people of the state should be vested in a General Assembly. Now notice that. It's the power of the people that is afforded to the General Assembly. It's not the other way around. It's not the General Assembly giving people power, but people giving the Assembly power. This should consist of a Senate and a House of Representatives. I'm going to stop right there because you're going to hear me refer to our form of government here in Arkansas as a bicameral legislature. What that means, quite simply, is that there's two houses. The General Assembly is the big entity. Then we have the House of Representatives and we have the Senate. The Article 5, Section 1 goes on to say, but the people reserve to themselves the power to propose legislative measures, laws, and amendments to the Constitution, and to enact or reject the same at the polls, independent of the General Assembly, and also reserve the power at their own option to approve or reject at the polls any entire act or any item of, excuse me, I just went too far. Sorry about that. But they have the right to either approve or reject at the polls an entire act or any item of an appropriation bill. Now, what's really important about this is what we refer to as direct democracy. And direct democracy means that in the Arkansas Constitution, the people retain power to act as a legislative branch. And that legislative branch is one that can be called upon when there is either a law passed by the General Assembly that the people don't agree with. They have the right to collect signatures, to create a referendum. And if enough Arkansans agree that a law is not right, they can take it to the ballot. And that allows all Arkansans to serve as a check and balance on the legislative process. The second thing that they can do is propose constitutional amendments, things that they feel that the legislature has not properly overseen. They can actually, again, by collecting signatures, they can bring to the people the right to change the Constitution or to create laws in accordance. Now, this particular session is brought to us by Arkansas in Action, the legislature. It's brought to you by Arkansas Civic Action Network. We are a nonprofit, nonpartisan group, and we are headquartered in Little Rock, but we serve the entire state of Arkansas. This series, it's 6 parts, and it is done in collaborative spirit with the ACLU of Arkansas, For Our People, Get Loud Arkansas, the Public Policy Center at the University of Arkansas, Division of Agriculture, Stand Up Arkansas, and the University of Arkansas Little Rock downtown. These are the different parts of the 6-part series. And as a result of that, today is the first, and you will see presentations coming up that will also be posted, as David said, in our YouTube channel so that you're able to catch up in the future. Give me 1 second. I'm going to go ahead and mute that clicking so we get rid of that. Awesome. All right. Week 1. This is what we're going to cover today. Today, we're going to be talking about the legislature itself. And our goal is to have you be able to identify the structure of Arkansas's legislature and understand how it uses that structure to make decisions. We want you to be able to recognize the roles of key legislative leaders and communities. We want you to understand how a bill is introduced and how it progresses through the legislative process. And we'll be able to illustrate the use of amendments in the bill-making process as well. Now, when we did this program live, we had a special guest, State Representative Denise Ennett, and we're going to try to go back and pull some snippets of wisdom that she gave us and post them on a future video that you'll also find here in our YouTube channel. By way of housekeeping, I'm not going to go through all of this because, quite frankly, you're not there, or at least not with me right now. But this housekeeping slide will give you an idea of the values that we share. We believe that everyone's voice is important. We believe the best way to hear those voices is to listen to each other, to seek to understand, and to share by moving the conversation forward. Now, getting right to it, right? The structure of the Arkansas legislature is that it is a bicameral legislature. I mentioned that already. We have 100 people in the House of Representatives and 35 in the Senate. Now, the General Assembly, which is what we call those two things combined, is one of three separate and distinct branches of government here in Arkansas. So much like on the federal level, where we have the Congress, we have the judicial system, and we have the presidency. Here in Arkansas, of course, we have an executive branch overseen by our governor. We have a judicial branch that is overseen by our Supreme Court, our Arkansas Supreme Court, and then we have the General Assembly. The membership of each chamber is geographically apportioned every 10 years. So what happens is that every 10 years, when the census is taken in the United States, the state of Arkansas is reviewed to make sure that the representation of each district is approximately equal. Lines are drawn, changes are made, and as a result of that, the idea is hopefully each legislature will have about an equal number of people in their district. One of the things that we're not going to spend time talking about in this video, but we will in the future, is the idea of gerrymandering. You see, once those divisions are made, it's done through what's called a board of apportionment. And that board of apportionment can be very partisan because it's made up of the governor, the Secretary of State, and the Attorney General. Well, right now, for an example, all three of those people, all three of those individuals come from one party. And as a result of that, there's this tendency to skew the lines in order to be able to ensure their party remains in power. Now, that happens whether it's Democrats in charge or Republicans in charge. It's just that we need to be aware of gerrymandering in order to understand that sometimes the representatives' districts don't reflect the diversity or the population, right, of the entire state. And that's an important thing to remember as we're talking about the types of bills individual legislators may put forward. Now, all members of the General Assembly must be U.S. citizens, and they all must reside in their districts. Members of the House must be 21 years of age, and in the Senate, 25 years of age. So there's an opportunity here for the legislature to represent all of us, right? By having some young, some old, some in the middle, some Black, some white, some Hispanic, some men, some women, some rich, some poor. All of that is a beautiful way of weaving a tapestry of legislation that serves all Arkansans. Now, the political parties in the legislature at this time, if we look to the left-hand side of your screen, that's representing the House of Representatives. And you can see that as of January 2025, there were 100 members, and by far, the Republican Party dominates. What that means is that a lot of bills come whipping through the legislature very, very quickly because there is agreement on ideology, there's an agreement on priorities, there's an agreement on methodology that's often shared within a party. So having 82 members of the Republican Party in the House of Representatives means that many bills are voted on purely by along party lines, along party lines. You can see that that wasn't always the case, though, in the chart directly below it. You can see that up until 2010, the Democrats actually dominated our House of Representatives. And it wasn't until 2012 that we saw that shift occur. Many times when we present this information, students will ask me, why did that happen? And we would basically point out that there's no one single reason. Scholars are not in full agreement upon what caused this kind of shift. And Arkansas wasn't the only state. In fact, Arkansas was one of the last Southern states to move from a Democratic government to a Republican one. Largely, we believe part of this, of course, had to do with President Obama entering the White House and a fear that not moving to the further to the right might create some long-term changes that much of the country didn't want to see happen. When we look over on the right-hand side, you can see the Senate breakdown. Again, there's 35 members of the Senate, and again, overwhelmingly Republican. So the entire General Assembly then is largely dominated by one political party. And the Senate, just like the House of Representatives, was not always like that, but changed in about 2012. The structure of the General Assembly is fairly consistent, and it convenes in regular session on the second Monday in January in odd-numbered years. So this being 2025, the legislature convened for the first time in 2025 on January 13th, the first Monday. The session is limited to 60 days, but it can be extended. And that's done by a series of votes and a series of agreements that are reached within the legislature. I want to point out here that the legislature is actually governed by rules. There are rules in the House and there are rules in the Senate, but those rules are actually established by each House. So the House of Representatives decides what its rules will be and votes on them. And in the Senate, the same thing happens. Why is this important? Because it means that they can make changes on the fly. Nothing is actually cast in stone. Of course, they have to operate within the framework of the Constitution, but they've got a lot of latitude to change things as they're going along. The legislature in the even number of years actually only convenes for a fiscal session. And by that, it means that in the even number years, the General Assembly will only take up bills that deal with revenue or other fiscal matters, so economic matters. They will not take up the broad range of issues that we see, for example, this time. I think I was told recently that there's well over 300 bills that have been filed in the General Assembly, and it's because they only have a chance to change laws every 2 years. The session is limited to 30 days in the fiscal sessions, but again, it can be extended. In addition to either regular sessions or fiscal sessions, the governor may call a special session at any time. But when he or she does that, it can only be for one specific matter. So, or a number of matters, but they have to be very specifically described. So, for example, the governor could call a special session to deal with immigration. They could call a special session to deal with regulating medical marijuana. They could call a special session to deal specifically with education. They have that right to do it. But during the time that special session is operating, they can only deal with issues for that specifically named matter. Again, a General Assembly may extend special sessions as well, and the legislature does actually agree upon and determine their date of adjournment, and they have to consent with each other. The structure of the House of Representatives is that you have these 100 people who have all been elected by their district. And by the way, they're elected every 2 years. And all of them run for re-election every 2 years. So when they meet for that very first time, so on January 13th, they elected their presiding officer of the House, which is called the Speaker. The Speaker is responsible for presiding over all House proceedings. They recognize members on the floor who wish to speak. A member is not allowed to speak unless they have been recognized by the Speaker. They decide all questions of order Now, they oftentimes will consult with a parliamentarian, but it's up to the speaker to say, yes, that's a point of order. No, you cannot be talking about that right now. No, we're not going to hear that bill. Yes, we are going to. That's an acceptable motion. Those things are decided by the speaker. The speaker's major power, however, lies in being able to determine which committees every member sits on. And that's important because the committee is where most of the work is done. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in a second. But the committee structure is basically what drives legislation going forward. The Speaker of the House certifies all bills and resolutions passed by the House. They control and preserve the order in the House chamber and the galleries, and they call members to order. Now, I want to just emphasize that gallery piece right there, because you may not know, but you can at any time go and sit in the gallery of either the Senate or the House and watch things as they happen. And you're always welcome to do that. In addition, the Arkansas Legislature live streams most committee meetings and most House and Senate floor proceedings. So you can also watch it from the comfort of your own home. We always urge you, though, to go in person if you can, because it's important not just for you to watch what's happening, but for the legislators to know you're watching them. It's important they're not making decisions thinking nobody's paying attention, because when they do, traditionally, those aren't necessarily good decisions. The speaker is assisted, as I mentioned earlier, by a parliamentarian. He's the one who maintains all of the rules of the House of Representatives, as well as he is the one who is fluent in Mason's Manual of Legislative Procedure. Those are the two documents that are used in order to maintain order. The chief clerk of the House is the one who is responsible for record keeping and bill processing. And then you have the chief of staff, who supervises all the employees, accounts for expenditures, and responds to both members and constituents' requests. The legislative officers that I just mentioned on the previous slide, they're actually appointed by each chamber. The House elects the speaker by majority. Then the speaker appoints a speaker pro tempore who acts in their absence, and up to 4 assistants, one from each congressional district. They'll run the meeting. So if the speaker's not available, or they, for some reason, are not in the Capitol on the day things need to be met, or a session has to be held, these folks are kind of the backups, right? So they'll take over. Other House officers include the coordinator of legislative services, the chief clerk, and the parliamentarian. Now, the legislative services, they're responsible for providing legislative support to the entire General Assembly. And we'll talk about that a little bit in a moment when we talk about how a bill is made. The Senate also elects a president pro tempore. Instead of a speaker. That's what it's called in the Senate. But that person is also third in line in succession. So if something were to happen to governor, the person who would take over would be the lieutenant governor. If lieutenant governor is not capable, able, or available, then the president pro tempore from the Senate would be the next in line. The lieutenant governor actually officially is the president of the Senate and the presiding officer who votes to break all ties that may occur. Now, in our legislature, that doesn't normally happen because we have 35 members, so ties are very unlikely, as compared to in the US Senate, where there are 100 members. So a 50-50 split is definitely possible and happens more frequently than we would think. Every day when the General Assembly meets, this is in the House of Representatives, they begin by having a prayer, then they have a Pledge of Allegiance, and then they call roll. The roll call is just to see who's in the House, who's there, who's not. If somebody is not there for the day, oftentimes a co-member will let the speaker know that a representative is not present, so that way they don't hold up the votes in any way waiting for them. It also changes the way the quorum would be established for each session. They then read and approve the previous day's journal, kind of like the minutes from the previous day. They hear reports from any select committees that are operating. They hear reports from standing committees, take care of any unfinished business, any executive communications, anything the governor wants them to know. And then the next step is the bill making process, the introduction, reading, and advancement of bills and resolutions. When a bill is first filed by a legislator, it goes to the House or the Senate, where it is read to all members of the House or the Senate. It's then assigned to a committee, and from that point forward, the committee will hear most of the things. There's actually a first and a second reading, and then it will end up in the committee. When it hits the assembly for the third reading, it's normally when they're taking a vote on that piece of legislation. Finally, there's an announcement of any upcoming committee meetings, and then they are adjourned for the day. Most of the time, the Senate and the House meet in the afternoon. Most of the time, they convene at 1:30 p.m., but that can change depending upon the order that is necessary for the day. I'm hoping that you're going to be able to see this if we play it, because most of us remember this, but I'm going to tell you, as silly and outdated as you would think it is, it's still applicable today. So let's take a look.
You sure gotta climb a lot of steps to get to this Capitol building here in Washington. Well, I wonder who that sad little scrap of paper is.
I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. Well, it's a long, long journey to the capital city. It's a long, long wait while I'm sitting in committee. But I know I'll be a law someday. At least I hope and pray that I will. But today I am still just a bill.
Gee, Bill, you certainly have a lot of patience and courage.
Well, I got this far. When I started, I wasn't even a bill. I was just an idea. Some folks back home decided they wanted a law passed, so they called their local congressman, and he said, "You're right, there ought to be a law." Then he sat down and wrote me out and introduced me to Congress, and I became a bill. And I'll remain a bill until they decide to make me a law. I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And I got as far as Capitol Hill. Well, now I'm stuck in committee, and I'll sit here and wait while a few key congressmen discuss and debate whether they should let me be a law. I hope and pray that they will. But today I am still just a bill.
Those congressmen arguing. Is all that discussion and debate about you?
Yeah, I'm one of the lucky ones. Most bills never even get this far. I hope they decide to report on me favorably, otherwise I may die.
Die?
Yeah, die in committee. Oh, but it looks like I'm gonna live. Now I go to the House of Representatives and they vote on me.
If they vote yes, what happens?
Then I go to the Senate and the whole thing starts all over again.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And if they vote for me on Capitol Hill, well, then I'm off to the White House where I'll wait in a line with a lot of other bills for the president to sign. And if he signs me, then I'll be a law. I hope and pray that he will. But today I am still just a bill.
You mean even if the whole Congress says you should be a law, the president can still say no?
Yes, that's called a veto. If the president vetoes me, I have to go back to Congress and they vote on me again, and by that time you're so
By that time, it's very unlikely that you become a law. It's not easy to become a law, is it?
No, but how I hope and pray that I will. But today I am still just a bill. He signed your bill, now you're a law. Oh, yeah.
Well, thank you for indulging me with that slide, because I think that it does so succinctly like sum up how it works, right? In the state of Arkansas, most bills are drafted by the legal staff of the Bureau of Legislative Research. This is an important thing for us to understand because in Arkansas, our General Assembly is a part-time job. Being a state representative or being a state senator doesn't pay you enough or provide you with any support staff or help. You're kind of just there on your own and have a limited amount of time and resources to actually do a lot of the drafting of bills or the research on them. Now, one of the things that is negative about that, of course, is that it is coming from and reliant upon this Bureau of Legislative Research. However, on a positive side, it means that our legislators can truly represent everyday people. They can be doctors and farmers and craftsmen and attorneys and accountants and dentists and all sorts of people, right? And as a result of that, we get a really nice representation of a cross-section of Arkansas. Only members of the General Assembly may introduce a bill. The governor cannot. The governor, if she wants something passed into law, has to have a senator and or a House member who's willing to sponsor that bill. Sponsors mean that you're the one who's suggesting it, you're proposing it. And the sponsors are the ones who are asked to describe and speak to the bill. When they come to the committee and they do that, we call it running the bill. The sponsor actually hand delivers the signed original and 2 copies of the bill to the bill numbering clerk. It's assigned a number. HB means it's a House bill. SB means it's a Senate bill. HJR is a House joint resolution, and an SJR is a Senate joint resolution. Bills are then read by number and title the first time on the day of introduction, and usually twice. So that first reading and the second reading of a bill happen the same day, and they normally happen when the bill is first filed. The bill is then assigned to a committee by the Speaker and or the President pro tempore in the Senate, and it is in that committee where the details be worked out, where debates will happen, and where we as everyday Arkansans have the right to have our voice heard. This chart kind of breaks that down a little bit, and I think you can see here, if we take a look at it, that there is an opportunity for many various places for, I'm going to see if I can get a pointer here that would be bigger. Hang on a second. Yeah. Okay. So for an example, if we look here, right, I'm just going to point out some of the places where we have the chance to participate in the process. Of course, we have the opportunity to be part of the process here, where these bills start as an idea, right? Because we have the option of bringing those ideas to our legislators. It is possible for a bill to be presented because an everyday Arkansan thought something should be changed. The second place we have the opportunity to participate is here, where the sponsor, as I mentioned, runs the bill. They explain it to the committee and they bring in expert testimony. So if you ever wanted to testify on a bill, you simply go to the committee meeting when it's scheduled, and all of that is public information we'll talk about. And you sign up. You sign up before the committee starts, let them know you want to speak about it, and you have the opportunity then to participate in a public hearing, which is kind of noted here, right? This public hearing portion of it. The committee then will have, normally after they've heard all this testimony and heard from the public, they will make a motion to either pass it, to not pass it, or to pass it as amended, meaning that during the committee process, they found some changes or some adjustments they wanted to make. They're not changed in the actual original bill, but they're changed as an amendment to the bill. So if the committee does votes to do not pass, it's dead. A bill sponsor can bring it back to the committee twice, unless they have the votes expunged which case they have a little bit more time at the plate, but we won't get in the weeds on that one, right? We won't go down that path. Just for the most part, know that they have 2 times to bring it. If the bill is passed, then it will go on to the general floor, right? So if this is a House bill, then it passes through the House, say, Committee on Education. It then will go to the entire House of Representatives for a final vote. At that time, legislators will discuss the bill, explain why they agree or they disagree with it, and ultimately they will then again vote to either pass it or fail it. Normally, most bills take a simple majority in order to pass. And if it is passed, it then goes on to the other chamber. So if this is a House bill, it started as a House bill, went to the House Committee on Education. It was passed. It was a do pass. Then it came to the House floor, passed. It will then be sent over to the Senate. The Senate will then refer it to the Senate subcommittee on, let's say, education. And after that time, if it's again a pass, it will then go to the Senate. If the Senate concurs that it's a good bill and they pass it as well, it will then be sent to the governor for signing. Oops, sorry. Oops, now I have circles on here. I'm not going to take time to get rid of those right now. There are basically 4 different types of committees. There are joint committees, meaning they're made up of members of the House and the Senate, or there are committees just in the House or just in the Senate, or there could be temporary committees that are sent up, which are often referred to as a task force. One of the things I love about the Arkansas legislative system is that they're very transparent in making a website available to give us information. So if I click, for an example, on this House of Representatives, I hope I'm going to come up. Sorry that you're seeing my spelling bee results for today. I didn't have a good day either. But you can see here that a number of committees, right, that are set up. So we have the Advanced Communication Committee, we have Aging Children, we have Agriculture, City Council, Education Committee, et cetera, et cetera. So there are a number of committees here. One of the more active ones is the State Agencies and Governmental Affairs Committee, because it has to hear all bills that come forward that deal with statewide kinds of changes. And if I click on that, I'll find out exactly who is on that committee. So now I can see both the chair, in this case, the chair of that committee is Representative Gazaway. I can also see who the representatives are that are on that committee. So we see that we have Representative Rick Beck, et cetera, et cetera. Now, even cooler, wait, there's more. I can click on the person's name and it will actually bring me to their profile. Now, that gives me something very powerful, their phone number. Not in every case, but in many cases, the phone number that's listed here is the cell phone of the member, in which case you can text it, you can call it, you can speak up about bills that are making their way through that you feel strongly about. In addition, their email is listed here as well. It gives you some basic information about them, and then it goes on to tell us about the committees that are, excuse me, the bills that are in that specific committee. Okay. All right. So with that being said, we have the same thing on the Senate side. I'll just show you that real quickly. So on the Senate side, we see all of these committees. Let's take a look at education. I click here and it will take me to, it'll tell me that the chair is Senator Jane English. And if I click on that bill, I can see her profile along with her contact information. One of the other things I just want to point out is that here, let me just go back one. On the committee information, it will also tell you who the staff people are. So the legislative analyst is someone who may be very helpful to you because if you need questions answered or you want to know more about a bill that may be coming into the committee, it is possible to contact the legislative assistant as well and talk to them about what might be happening. All right, we're going to just move right along and talk about these the legislative committee structure. As we see here, let me get rid of this so we can see a little bit better. House members, when they're assigned to committees by the Speaker in the House will usually give a member one Class A committee and one Class B committee. Now, sometimes people ask me, how is the chair of the committee chosen? Well, that's done specifically by the Speaker. The Speaker is the one who appoints the chair. Now, unfortunately, in the House of Representatives this last year, they passed a rule that said that no Democrat can chair a committee. I say that's unfortunate because I think it limits leadership and limits voices being heard and limits diverse voices being heard. So I think that is an issue, but it is their choice because, as I mentioned earlier, they set their own rules. If we look over at the Senate side, same thing. They usually get one Class A and one Class B. You can see that on the Senate side, there are less committees. And the reason for that is because there's less members, right? So they kind of bunch things up a little bit more than the House might do. Traditionally, the House is the big generator of legislation. It goes through the House first. And the Senate is intended to be a little bit slower and more pragmatic in considering bills. So they usually, oftentimes, hear bills coming out of the House. Hasn't really been the case this session, but that's the tradition behind it. Joint committees are committees, like I said, where representatives of both the House and the Senate are on it. The ones we have listed here as joint committees like budget, public retirement, energy, performance. Those are standing committees, meaning that they are always in existence. Joint committees can meet outside of the regular sessions. So they can be holding meetings throughout the year in order to be discussing issues that may be forthcoming, or to take public testimony, or just to do the work of their body. Select committees are listed there, as well as some special joint committees. These are, again, committees that can meet outside of the session to kind of get things going. So when the session starts, it's effective and efficient. If a bill, to make its way through the committee, as I mentioned earlier, committees normally meet in the morning before session starts. Bills are scheduled for discussion by committee. The sponsor explains the bill. It's called running the bill. He secures and introduces witnesses, answers any questions, and debates the merit of the bill. And then after public testimony has been received and those debates have happened, he closes the bill. He normally will, after giving kind of a summation of why he believes the bill is good for Arkansas, will say at the very end, so I ask for a good vote, meaning that please vote for this. I want it to happen. Witnesses against the bill are given equal opportunity by committee chair. And that's a little bit of a misnomer, because while they do normally alternate between people speaking for a bill and people speaking against the bill, oftentimes public testimony will be limited in terms of time. Sometimes just each person only gets, say, 3 minutes. Other times they keep it to, say, 30 minutes for everybody who signed up. And that 50-50 back and forth may not represent the people who have signed up. So for example, we were in a committee meeting, Senate committee meeting during the 95th session, where 33 people had signed up to speak. Only 11 were actually heard. If you take a look at the makeup of the 33 people who signed up, 24 of 33 were against a bill. And only 9 were for it. So overwhelmingly, it was the will of the people to have the bill rejected. However, because they only heard 11 people speak, that was a 50-50 split. So the members of the committee may not have realized how overwhelmingly the bill was being opposed by people from the public. Committee will then recommend, as I mentioned earlier, a do pass as amended, or do not pass. And it usually takes 11 votes in the House and 5 in the Senate in order for a bill to move forward. Once it goes to the floor, then again, remember, they've already read it once, they've already read it twice, And by the time it gets to the third time after it's been approved or due passed by a committee, it will be debated and the final vote will be taken. If it's approved, it will go to the other chamber, and it's passed, then it goes by both chambers, it goes to the governor. If the bill is amended anywhere along the line, it has to go back over to the other side just to get it approved in its final amended form. The governor, of course, when she receives the bill, she may sign the bill into law. She could request the bill be amended and return it to the General Assembly for approval. She can veto it and return it to the General Assembly, where the House of Representatives and the Senate may override the governor's veto with a simple majority. That's different than national, by the way. Federal, they have to have a 2/3 vote in order to override a veto. But here in Arkansas, it's a simple majority. The governor can take no action and the bill becomes law without her signature, or for the most part, bills that become laws during the regular session are effective 90 days after the final official day of session, unless otherwise specified. Now, that's really important because remember how we talked at the very, very beginning about the people's right to reserve the right to have a referendum on any bill that was passed. If a bill is passed with what they call an emergency clause, it means that that bill must go into effect immediately upon the end of the session. When that is included in a bill, it means that bill cannot be put to a referendum. So there has been a lot of debate about whether or not the emergency clause is being used too frequently as a way to thwart the will of the people. But that is at this stage, there's no truth or fact to any of that. It is conjecture, but there are a lot of bills being passed with the emergency clause intact. Is that all there is? That's all there is when we're talking about the legislature's basic structure and how a bill is passed. But we have 5 more weeks worth of information we would absolutely love to share with you. Week 2 talks about how to track legislation, how to follow bills, and how to attend sessions, how to know when meetings are being held, etc. Week 3, oh, and by the way, week 2 is brought to us in conjunction with the ACLU of Arkansas, American Civil Liberties Union of Arkansas. Week 3, effective advocacy, how to make your voice heard, how to take advantage of giving public testimony, or just happening upon your legislator at the grocery store, right? You always have to be prepared to present your point of view. And in week 3, we practice that. Week 4, rulemaking and policy development, what happens after a bill becomes law. That's brought to us by 4R People. Week 5, direct democracy. That's those referendums and amendments that are presented through direct democracy. And that's brought to us by the Center for Public Policy and Stand Up Arkansas. And then week 6 is about the judiciary. And that is going to be a panel discussion by some local attorneys. And we're excited to have them with us. There's just some references here at the end. And I just want to, in closing, tell you how excited I am that you were here, that you took this time from your day to learn a little bit more about the Arkansas legislature. I hope we've given you some things to think about. I hope we've shared some information that you didn't know. But more importantly, I hope we caused some questions to come up in your mind, because it's only when we start to question that we engage our curiosity. And in that curiosity, we seek answers. And in seeking answers, we make our community stronger, better, and more involved. So thank you so much for being with us today. I hope you've enjoyed it. You can get more information about our organization at www.arkaction.net. arkaction.net. You already know our YouTube channel because that's where you're watching this. And we look forward to working with you in the future. So I'm Dr. Gail Choate. Thank you again for being here. My partner, Davis, has snuck off to do some other work right this moment. But we look forward to seeing you again in the future. Thanks. Bye for now.